We've been looking for an excuse
We have.
to talk about Severance, the hit Apple TV show. It just aired its second season finale last Friday. For those who don't know, the show explores themes about work culture, loneliness, mental health. And in our production meeting on Monday, we caught ourselves debating just how relevant the show and its themes are to topics we frequently cover on the show. So that said, if you don't want the season of Severance spoiled, or you just have no idea what Severance is, you should just skip ahead to the interview now.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because we're not going to explain the whole show.
No.
And we're also not going, and we're about to spoil it.
We are.
So just
get ready.
Okay, what did you think of the finale and basically the whole the two seasons so far and how it relates to some of the themes that we talked about?
Well, so this is the, like, every week, like I was joking with Julie about this, I would come into our meeting and say to you some version of like, I wish they would talk about offline topics on Severance so we could discuss it on the show. But I finally, like, the more I discuss the show with people, I realized that I think that's what Severance is. I really think that, like, Severance is offline : the podcast : the TV show.
Wow.
And it's not
That's a take. I like it.
It's not Succession, where, like, Succession is like, it's a 1-for-1, it's Fox News, it's the Murdochs, it's commenting on right-wing media, so it, like, would be very easy for us to kind of talk about its significance. But I think Severance is more oblique about it, but is absolutely speaking to loneliness, isolation, technology. I have a lot of thoughts on it, but I'm kind of curious if you came around to it since I pitched it a few days ago.
Yeah, I've been thinking about it, and what stuck out at me is at one point in the finale, in the season 2 finale, when they talk about Kier's eternal war against pain.
Yes.
And that's basically how they describe
Yep.
what they're trying to do with Severance,
Right.
and which, of course, like, you know, you see the main character, Adam Scott's character, the reason he did Severance is because he lost his wife.
Right.
And so he didn't want to have those memories and be dealing with that grief during his workday.
Right.
And so you go to work and you're a different person, right?
It's and technology as an anesthetic from the pains of the world.
Exactly.
Right?
And
That
it
reminds me of some things.
Yes. Well, that's what that was for me. That's the biggest connection, because it's the whole, you know, technology promises infinite pleasure.
Yes.
And all dopamine hits all the time.
Right.
And I think what we're starting to realize in the show is, like, without pain, there is no pleasure, and, like, life is pain and pleasure.
Right.
And, you know, we learned this during the offline challenge from our friend Dr. Catherine Price, Dr. Lemke, Dr. Anna Lemke.
When we did the anti-severance.
Yes.
We unsevered.
We unsevered. And it was funny, too, because we didn't plan to talk about this, but on White Lotus this week, there was also this line from the Buddhist monk where he says, you can't outrun pain. That's the one thing in the world.
Oh,
you
that's
can't.
interesting.
He's like, everyone
that's
tries
so
to.
funny. The two
They're all
shows,
trying to go to different pleasure points and it's different. You know, White Lotus is about different kinds of pleasure, right? It's like sex, it's drugs, it's but you can't outrun pain.
This is what I love about popular movies and TVs. It's a kind of art that, even if no one on either of those shows is thinking of themselves as making a show that is speaking to, like, contemporary political issues and the things that they're talking about in the news, everybody brings that to the set. Everybody brings that to the writing room, and it can end up in the show just as a reflection of what we're all feeling. Yeah,
especially at that given moment in time.
Right, exactly, which is, I think, is what can be so cool about it. So I think there's, like, I have a surface level read and a, like, subterranean read, which really aligns with yours. I think on the surface, it is about a show about living surrounded by and surrendering to technology run by giant tech companies that promise they're here to help us, to elevate humanity, and everyone gradually having this collective realization, as we have all had in society over the last 10 years, that that's all a lie, that we thought the tech company was idealistic and benevolent. And it turns out they're a bunch of, like, weird ass liars with strange, like, cultish beliefs, and they're kind of brutal. We thought the technology was here to serve us, but actually we are the cogs, we're the commodity being exploited, kind of, like, scraped for value and kind of imprisoned.
Yeah.
The more I watched the show, the more the metaphor of the, like, literal prison in technology was really resonant for me. And it's about that moment of realization. Like, the characters have that moment of realization, again, the way we all have, and how dehumanizing that feels, how outraged I feel, and wanting to, like, I think it's not for nothing that both seasons have culminated in prison breaks from the prison of technology. But I think what, like, really drove home for me that this is offline, the podcast, the show, is that, like, what is Severance the show really, really about? Like, what's really the message here? And I think much like our podcast started as about like exploitation by big tech, but we ended up kind of coming around and following every thread to like, actually it's about social alienation at the center of everything. And it's about how we've lost touch with who we are, like you said, as people, lost touch with our emotions, lost touch with one another, and that is the kind of thing that serves the tech exploitation. And it's all of these characters who live these atomized, emotionally isolated lives because they chose that, like Mark chose that, right? That's why he's severed. We learned that Cobell invented Severance because she wanted to escape the grief from her mother dying, or they're living this isolation because they're inside Lumen, which is like chosen that for them. But all of the characters have the same arc, which is that they feel drawn, maybe like despite themselves, to relationships. And to feel like that is actually the thing that has been missing without me realizing that I'm missing it, even in this sterile environments that are supposed to be so hostile to forming connections with each other, right? Like Irving and Bert, they're not even supposed to meet and they distrust each other so much, but they form this bond that completely changes who both of them are and that leads them to this like kind of liberation. Yeah. And this kind of like emancipation. I think this idea that like we're all finding our way back to relationships and putting that at the center of our lives feels very relevant to me.
And you might ask, well, if everyone wants that kind of connection and wants those relationships, why is it so hard to put those relationships at the center of your life? Mm-hmm. And I think the answer you're getting from Severance and also from other shows like this, I think from White Lotus as well, is relationships are hard, right? And they involve rejection and grief and uncomfortable moments and sort of fumbling over each other's insecurities. And I think technology can help us live more fulfilling lives if used correctly.
Sure.
But it cannot act as a shortcut for like the difficult work you have to do in life to build meaningful relationships.
Right.
And like a lot of, and especially in Severance, it is it's not just like these tech overlords being like corporate exploitation. It's them playing God.
Yes.
Right? Which is what we have seen in some of these tech companies as well, which is like our technology is going to solve a problem that humans cannot solve through their own relationships.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, it's very much like the algorithm will push you towards the conversations that we want you to have and the relationships that we think that you should be having, which just so happens to be good for our bottom line.
Yes, and it's also just like, you know what? Humans, whatever. They fuck everything up.
Right. The Egan should be in charge.
It's almost like it's the tech world view of government and democracy, right? Which is like, oh, it's so messy and they're not doing anything, that's inefficient. And we can build an algorithm to fix all this.
All of it makes it so wild to me that this show is produced and distributed by the smartphone company. And the more I was like, this is like the Severance floor is your phone. And I was like, it's made by the phone company?
I feel like Ben Stiller and Adam Scott incepted Apple
they did something amazing.
Show.
Yes. Like you wonder if Apple at some point gave Ben Stiller and Dan Erickson a note that was like, hey guys, we couldn't help but notice the villain of your show is an evil giant tech company that is like exploiting and killing people. Like maybe what if the season ended with Lumen inventing the iPod Shuffle? Everybody's friends again. Like everyone goes home and it's like all is forgiven.
What if there was like a cool update to Severance? We presented in a big event.
Hey, what if one day everybody goes, all the innies come down to the Severed floor and they all find their Severance chip, new U2 album loaded on there. No, look, Ben, Dan, if you're listening, I don't think that James Egan, who's the villain at the center of the show, who runs Lumen, I don't think that he's Steve Jobs. Obviously, there's not much that binds them together, but it would be very funny if he showed up in one episode in Black Turtleneck. I just think that would be funny.
Oh, I hope that we don't have to wait as long as we did for the second season for the third season.
They have said that it's going to be shorter, but I to me it's one of the best shows in decades.
I know. I'm gonna miss it.
Well, I'm gonna be rewatching it over and over again.
Yeah, me too, because it's one you really have to pay attention to.
I rewatched the last episode last night and I picked up a ton of great stuff. And also, there's a basketball game in the middle of it.
Oh,
I mean, it's just like that. The like basketball announcement music shows up, and then there's a marching band. So
the
it's
marching
like a fun
band
little
is
break.
insane and
it's
so fun.
So fun.
It's so fun.